Welcome to the Spiritual Healing Cloud podcast. We help you explore an alternative world of insight, healing, and growth. Hello everybody, welcome to Spiritual Healing Cloud. This is a really exciting episode for me today because I have with me Philippa Gale. Philippa is a Kundalini activation practitioner, and I have done about 4 sessions with Philippa without having a clue what the hell's been going on. And I see this as a perfect opportunity to not only introduce you to the magic of Kundalini activation, but also to lock Philippa down for an hour and make sure that she answers all of my questions as well. So welcome, Philippa. Hi, you're now live.
Hello.
Wonderful.
Hello.
Thank you so much. As I said, this has been something I've been wanting to chase up with you for years. When I've done sessions with you, I've done them online, and I join the session maybe 5 or 10 minutes before it starts. There's a very quick introduction, questions and answer session. And then as soon as the session finishes, we're done. So I've not had much time to really learn about what Kundalini activation is, and that's exactly why you're here today. So what we're going to be talking about in this episode is we are going to be talking about Kundalini energy. I'm no expert, Philippa is, so she's going to explain what Kundalini energy is. What's the purpose and benefits of activating Kundalini? What happens during a Kundalini activation session? And I'll be sharing with you my personal experience as well. I've got a short 1-minute video of my second ever Kundalini activation session, which is pretty crazy. And I'm quite excited to get that out for you to see. And also, this came up recently. I had a client contact me asking about a premature Kundalini awakening. It was a lady who contacted me and said she was going through hell with this. And this is, again, what Philippa and I are going to be talking about. So let's get started, Philippa. Thank you very much again for attending. First of all, what is Kundalini energy in its most simple terms?
Well, thank you for having me. Okay, so what's Kundalini energy? It's a divine energy that is said to be dormant at the base of our spine. Once awakened, it can lead to profound transformation, spiritual experiences, self-realization, and ultimately spiritual enlightenment.
Right. And when you say things like spiritual enlightenment, self-realization, is this purely a spiritual process? Is there any physical or emotional effects as well?
I think it's all encompassing. It's mind and body. So absolutely, there is benefits to the day-to-day, the real life. Yeah, those moments in between our spiritual practice. I think ultimately it's probably one of the primary drives for people looking into this type of work.
You say people looking. So what would it take for somebody to contact you and say, Philippa, I need a Kundalini activation now? What would they be experiencing before coming to you that they need to make some changes?
I think it's a very personal journey, isn't it? And I think everyone, if they find themselves inquiring about Kundalini, perhaps in fact, probably mostly they're already on that path. There's already some sort of switch that's turned on at some point in their life. Now, people either respond to that switch or they won't respond to that switch, but they tend to start on this without too much of a cliche, this journey, just looking at spiritual teachers, looking at various modalities, and perhaps this is why. And I suppose, like anything, we search around, and if there's a calling, if there's an inner nudge, a curiosity, perhaps they'll get in.
What I find interesting as well is we call this Kundalini activation. This is a service which you provide. So am I right that before somebody arrives, their Kundalini is lying dormant and they come to you and it's activated? Something has changed. Is that correct?
Well, it could be, but it might not be, because as I said, people can be in very different places. You could have been on that path of awakening your Kundalini for multiple lifetimes. People completely different ages might turn up. So there's no way of really knowing where people are at before they come across this. I think people tend to follow breadcrumbs, and if something is placed in front of him. So yeah, maybe in some instances No, there has no been previous activation, but I would probably say on the most part there has been something which has led them to start inquiring more about this. Some activation, some arousal of that energy that's triggered that next step. But yeah, who can say?
Where does the concept of Kundalini originate? Is it connected with yoga? Is it connected with anything in other religions or spiritual practices?
Okay, so the term Kundalini comes from ancient Indian spiritual traditions. However, it's kind of a term that's been globally adopted. But I mean, actually, if you look at many cultures and global spiritual histories, let's say, you're going to find stories or sacred texts or folklore resembling to the very same experiences, or perhaps obviously with their own mythology, rooting them to that. But yeah, I mean, it's Kundalini itself, when we're talking Indian mythology, it is supposed to be active in your body when you're in your mother's womb. And then when your heart starts to beat, as your body starts to grow in the womb, the heart starts to beat, and then the energy drops back down into the base of the spine, where it will remain there until it's your time to pass over, at which point that energy re-enters into the body and assists you as you cross over. So that's the Indian mythology behind it.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing which seems to be agreed upon with Kundalini energy is that it's an energy which lays dormant and it's at the base of our spine. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And is there association with a snake or something like that? That's what I seem to remember.
Yeah, so again, this is Indian mythology. It's represented by a coiled snake, dormant at the base of the spine, which then, as the Kundalini rises, the snake uncoils and starts to draw up the central column. Yeah, that's the imagery.
Yeah. This is a physical sensation which people can actually feel going through their body. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
again, I certainly remember that happening with me. Is it related to chakras in any way? Because it seems to be coming up the spine in those places where chakras, the main 7 chakras would be.
Yeah, exactly. So the concept being is that energy will rise and penetrate each of the main 7 chakras as it goes up, so it clears, unblocks to allow that free flow before it reaches its extent. It reverses back and then doubles back in and makes its return journey back down to the base.
Aside from Kundalini activation, which is the service which you're offering, how else might somebody perhaps doing forms of spiritual practices awaken their Kundalini themselves? Are there alternatives beyond Kundalini activation process?
Yeah, actually, and it's important to make that clear distinction. What Kundalini activation is a transmission of energy, is a downward moving energy. So what you're referring to is maybe more willful methods. So Kundalini yoga or Tantra or Qigong or breathwork, body locks, all of these types of, I mean, there's thousands, I guess, but are willful practices driving up energy from the root to the crown. So you, as a spiritual seeker, making that decision to rise your energy and willfully going about that. Yeah.
Understood. That's made it very clear for me. What I find fascinating, as you said, this is a transmission. So without trying to make it oversimplified, this is kind of a very easy path, isn't it? It's somebody comes to you, they pay their money and they're laying down and they're not having to master the yoga poses. They're not having to master their breath work. This is very much a case of lie down and it's going to happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, it's going to happen for those of you who it's ready. You get what you need, but essentially, yeah, it's not you actually doing anything. In fact, it's you doing nothing. It's a path of surrender, of letting go, of getting out of the way. So yeah, in that way, yeah, there's no difficult skills and practices in that sense. Yeah.
Sure. There's something really fascinating to me that you're a facilitator and you're transmitting this energy. And I know from my experience, this energy is incredibly intense. Again, I'm going to share the video of this shortly, but what does it take to become a facilitator? Is this something like with Reiki, when you begin training, you have to have this activated within yourself?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. My personal journey has been being attuned to Venom Wong's lineage.
And Venom Wong is the founder of Kundalini activation. Is that correct?
He's the founder of Kundalini Activation Process, CAP, which probably is one of the first to actually get global recognition. I have been aware that there's quite a few other things bubbling up, and so I wouldn't like to say who was the first and who wasn't the first. It's not my business to say that. But he's the founder of CAP, Kundalini Activation Process, and that's the route that I've taken. So through that attunement, let's say, I was then able to open up to his lineage, his channel, and I'm able to pass that on to the people that come to see me.
So it's like you've gone to this kind of secret school and you've been gifted this ability as such. I'd like to know more about that. There's very little information about Venom Wong and the actual training and the process involved. What does it take? Could you talk me through that journey from what made you interested in becoming a facilitator in the first place?
Well, it all kind of just fell into place, I suppose, following the breadcrumbs. I had already got a lot going on. I had an active Kundalini anyway before this from various practices. And so this particular thing, I think I was Googling, I was looking for an old video that I'd seen years before. I had some stuff going on with my own awakening, my own process. And I was looking for this old video of a American guy just discussing some things that was an issue for me. And yes, then I put in the acronym KAP. And found Venom Wong's video, and he was going to Copenhagen, which is quite close to me. So I thought, okay, I can hop on a plane, short journey, I'll go and see him. There was a lot happening in this video that was happening to me, so it really resonated with me. So
what type of things?
The movements. Would be would probably be one of the most prominent things. I was kriyas and spontaneous movements that were happening in the body, and they had some film of similar experiences.
Right. Before we go any further with this, because you said as you were finding out about KAP, you had a very strong Kundalini energy within you. How was that affecting you day to day? You were talking about kriyas. Does this mean that you were doing your day-to-day life and suddenly your hands would move in strange patterns? Were you getting spasms? How was it affecting you in kind of human life?
Well, yeah, that is what was happening. I was, already had a very strong daily spiritual practice, let's say. So there was a lot going on, and I was getting movement, not just within my practice, but while I'm sitting at work, tapping away on my computer, my arm would fling out or various stuff. There was stuff going on, and it is a journey and it's a clearing. There's a lot going on. So I was just looking for a little bit of support in some of my questions that were coming up for me, and this is why I was scouring the internet and I came across him.
It is a very, very strange experience, suddenly going through human life and all these weird body movements are happening. And again, this is something which I experienced after Kundalini activation it still happens actually, but it was very extreme in the 18 months after my last few sessions with you, to the point that if I was listening to music, I'd be getting like these, intense, it was like hiccups. If I was sitting down, if I went to lay on the bed, it was like a full-on epileptic seizure with my arms and legs flailing. I thought it was quite cute. It never really worried me. But how about you? I mean, how do you think people might feel if this is just happening perhaps spontaneously for them before they heard about Kundalini? Do people come to you worried that these things are happening and they need to stop it, they need to get it under control? Or is it more the case of this is happening, they want to understand it more?
I think I get both. I would get people that will experience that, whether that's before they've done a session with me or after they've done a session with me, that will feel confused about what's going on or concern or just want to understand a bit more. And then you'll get another person who finds the whole thing fascinating and feels really, really cool to learn more and understand more. Yeah, and people who know what it is already, and before it happens to them, they're well aware of this. They've read about it, they've heard about it, they've seen it. So yeah, I mean, any and all situations. Yeah.
So you've been researching about Venant Wong. He was coming to Copenhagen, and you went to see him. Was this for a course to become a practitioner, or just to learn more about Kundalini activation at that point?
It was a weekend immersion event, and that's what I was going for. But I was aware of training coming up because I'd seen that he was part of his plan was to tour around various locations around the world looking for potential people to become facilitators. I mean, back then it was really early days. It's very different now, but at that stage there wasn't many around, and he was looking for possible people that he would be able to attune. Yeah. So yeah, I was aware of the training, and it was definitely there in the back of my mind as a possibility. I had been looking for a while really to change what I was doing, and do something. What should I say? Work a little bit more for the soul. Do something a bit more enriching. So it was in my sights to start working with energy. So yeah, when I saw that he was going to be doing training for it, it definitely sparked my interest. But in the first instance, I just wanted to go and meet him and see what he had to say. Yeah.
It sounds like to become a facilitator, do you need to be chosen? Do you need to have some innate ability first, which can be released? Could anybody do this, or what would it take to be approved to be a trainer for something like this?
Well, as I understand it, back in those days, in 2019, he was handpicking. There was no application process. He was doing classes, and he would contact people or speak to people if he thought that they would make a good facilitator. Well, in terms of what Venant Wong has said, and I can only really quote from what he said, he was looking for people who he would be able to provide attunement with various ease. He said something like, I don't know, 1 in 4 or something like that would be of the people who would be suitable for becoming a facilitator. Yeah, I think it was obviously just looking for certain things. It was obviously seeing how people responded to energy or reading, but perhaps you'd have to ask him specifically if you wanted to know exactly why he chooses the people he chooses.
Did you feel that you would be one of those 4 when you arrived?
That's a good question. Yeah, perhaps I don't know. Perhaps I felt that calling. Yeah, perhaps I did. Yeah.
Just could you give me a summary of what you did in that 2 days?
Well, it was a weekend immersion. The first day consists of the Kundalini activation transmissions, and the second day is non-duality. So we do a few non-duality exercises.
Right, you're going fast here. The first day was the transmission. So were you going in as a client, having this energy transmitted to you at that point? Is that what?
Yeah. It was a retreat for all intents and purposes. It was an immersion weekend. So there was about, I don't know, 25 odd participants. And yeah, he ran a 2-day retreat effectively.
Okay. And the first day, what you experienced there this is what you gift to your clients nowadays. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So it's the energy transmission. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to experience that as a student on day 1.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Now, is the non-dual work, is that related to Kundalini activation, or is that a separate thing?
Well, it is related, of course, but it is also separate. So he combines these two things because they're kind of both important elements to a full and permanent Kundalini awakening. It's kind of almost different schools of thought where which path someone will take, but ultimately both sides, let's say, need to be developed, for want of a better way of putting it. Yeah.
I'll come back to that afterwards, because I haven't done any training with you about non-dual aspects of your work. I've only really experienced the Kundalini activation. I'm wondering, is this something which would follow on from a Kundalini activation process?
Yes, essentially, yeah. I mean, see, the Kundalini activation is, we're talking about embodied energy. It's the physical body, it's the energy, it's the embodiment, it's the connection, the reconnection to the body. So very much internal embodied energy. The non-dual states are the disembodied states. So this is this contradiction of almost going inwards and expanding out into all things, the oneness, where there is no divide, right? There is only oneness.
Yeah. Okay, beautiful. And you did the 2-day immersion. You were chosen or given the opportunity to do further training to become a facilitator. Is that right?
Yeah, so afterwards, he contacted me and asked me if I wanted to come and train. He was coming to London later in the year, and I said, yes, I did.
Okay. And how long was that training? How intensive was it?
Well, it was in person for just a week, and then it was followed up with about 5 months on.
When is the moment where you're suddenly able to transmit Kundalini energy? Does this happen on day one? Is this something which you develop over time?
Both is true. So the attunement is the attunement, and then from that first, I think the first day he was getting us to practice in pairs. But yes, of course, it builds over time as well. Yeah, of course, and it has a lot to do with your own personal development as well. In fact, it's massively to do with your own personal development. It is intensive training simply because not only are you learning this new skill, let's say, but you're also going through a very deep personal process. So yeah, absolutely. My transmissions that I was doing back in 2019, very, very different to the transmissions I'm doing now.
How so?
Because I suppose, like anything in this world, the more you do it, the better you get at it, I suppose.
Okay.
Simply, yeah.
Okay. And we'll come to what goes on in the background as such. My experience with Kundalini activation through you has been, you've been transmitting it to me through Zoom, which I still cannot fathom. It's like such an intense energy coming through. How does this work? You also do this in person as well. So I will come back to what's actually going on when you're doing the transmission. But could you give me an example of the type of practice you would be doing during the training? You said you'd be working with, would it be one other person?
Yeah, so we were doing just pair work, working with one other, and then we'd switch and work with someone else, and you spend time working on each other.
Could you talk me through just one of the exercises which you might have done? Do you keep your eyes closed? Are you physically in contact with the person? What's going through your mind as you're transmitting that energy to the practice partner?
Well, it's a very intuitive process. For me, when I started, I think I really found it easier to have my eyes closed because I was able to empty my head that much easier. But obviously, if you're in a room full of people and you're working with people, you can't keep your eyes closed. So that was something I had to, a learning curve. I had to work out pretty quick that I would have to be more in the room. And generally you're sort of split between maybe 40-60. You need to have a certain amount of awareness in the room, but also you're opening up into channel and clearing yourself out. So yeah, I suppose the pair work, we were just doing exactly that. You have that intention, you've received the attunement, you really are. I mean, I know it sounds funny, but really it's just a case of learning to get out of the way and allowing the channel to move through you. I'm really not doing anything. I'm getting out of the way. That's my job, to get out of the way.
Is this something anybody could learn themselves from a book?
I don't know about from a book, but I personally believe that every single human being has the ability to transmit energy. In fact, we're all doing it all the time. We're all doing it all the time, aren't we? You walk into the room. If you're in a really bad mood and you walk into the room, everyone else in the room is going to have some awareness of that, because you're transmitting an energy. Equally, if you walk in a really happy mood, they're going to feel that as well. So the truth is that we're all transmitting energy all of the time. And then we come back to the skill. Maybe it's a forgotten art. Way back when it was a very common thing and everyone was always transmitting energy and actively and transmitting, like energy healing, for example, healing one another and setting that intention to heal another. I think human beings are incredibly powerful, and I think a lot of our innate skills have been forgotten over thousands of years. That's my belief. And so, yeah, I believe everyone can transmit energy. And I think that where we come back again, yes, I'm transmitting a specific channel, a specific lineage, and when I'm doing this work. But in terms of the human ability to transmit energy, yeah, of course, everyone could do it.
I'm curious about the word transmit, actually, because is this something which is finite? Like, when you transmit energy, are you taking it from somewhere, giving it to me? Do you find yourself exhausted afterwards, or is it just going through you? How do you feel after the transmission?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think at the beginning, I did find it would wipe me out quite easily. It has a lot to do with the people I'm working with. The various energies in the room, whether people are holding a lot of resistance to me while I'm working with them, or whether they're able to completely open up and I'm allowed to channel more fluidly, let's say. The more my journey with this work has carried on, the easier it has been for me to fully move out of the way and allow the channel to happen without it taking too much out of me. But, if I'm doing a lot of work, I'll feel it. I'll be aware of it. Yeah, for sure.
Could you transmit energy to me without my permission? You were saying about some people might have some resistance. How about if I said to you, Philippa, I'm going to turn Zoom on right now. I'm going to lay on my bed, transmit this energy, and I'm going to block it. I'm going to absolutely refuse to receive it. What would happen?
You probably wouldn't receive anything at all. Just like I've got the ability to, and you have the ability to transmit, it must then also be true that you have the ability to not receive, right? If you have that intention of not receiving, and I think a lot will say when we're talking about Reiki healing, for example, the idea is one can send energy to another, but if their higher self is not in agreement and wishes to receive, then that energy will be transferred elsewhere to where it's needed most, let's say. So this is what the teachings I always used to hear with Reiki, and I suppose it's similar, but yeah, of course. Yeah.
Does it get easier if... Spiritual Healing Cloud is proudly sponsored by my own business, Guided Healing. Join me for profound unscripted hypnosis sessions to explore past lives, connect with your higher self, gain insights and experience physical and emotional healing. Learn more at guidedhealing.ltd. Somebody has repeated sessions.
Yeah, so I think it will become easier with repeated sessions if they're holding resistance, because they may have turned up in that class when they're basically been dragged along by a friend. A friend said, "Oh, come along," and they haven't followed their own set of breadcrumbs. Their friend has pulled them along and decided them to come. Maybe they're just not in that place for whatever reason. Something on a very subconscious level has decided that it is not right for them to receive at that moment. So you're going to get those sort of scenarios where they're holding a lot of resistance. Perhaps, similarly, there's maybe a lot of skepticism, I suppose, coming in. Again, maybe someone says something and they're just not too sure about it and they're going to hold it. This is a path of surrender, as I said. It is about opening it up and allowing. And if you are very closed and not surrendered and very guarded, you're going to struggle to truly appreciate and feel what's going on. So yes, but equally, perhaps, like you said, fear. You mentioned fear. Yeah, could be simply fear, and maybe just doing a few sessions understand, because they might turn up and have no idea what's going to happen. They've turned up to this class, they have absolutely no clue, and they're holding a little bit of fear and uncertainty about what it's all about. So when they come to their first session, they're still a little bit unsure and they're looking around, and I get that occasionally. I will get people sort of, although the idea is that people will close their eyes, I will see, particularly online, but even in person, people open their eyes and have a quick scan around of the room. They're just checking things out. They're not too sure, and then they close their eye and one eye open, sort of thing. So they're holding something. They're not too sure. So yeah, if they feel called, maybe they return a few more times, start to relax, they start to figure out how to surrender, how to open up, how to let go, and resistance drops. Yeah.
Are there any contraindications? Are there any types of clients with perhaps pre-existing medical conditions, for example, that you would not take on as a client?
So we do put that up in frequently asked questions about who is not suitable to come to Kundalini activation. But equally, I mean, we're really talking about anyone that starts getting involved with Kundalini energy anyway, because this is a process of clearing, unblocking, changing that information in the cell and releasing. So if you are an individual that may struggle to deal with very strong emotional releases, whether that be for medical reasons or psychological reasons, or even the very young, you wouldn't work with children because they're not necessarily going to have the emotional maturity to stuff that comes up, and this process is not all sunshine and daisies. You're looking at clearing out the crap, for want of a better word, in your body. And if you're going to do that, you need to be in a place where you are stable enough to deal with that stuff that comes up, because it will come up. Yeah. So no, it's not going to be the right thing for everybody.
Yes, of course. And you say a lot can come up. So what could happen afterwards? Obviously, it's a clearing and it's a healing process. Do people maybe get nightmares? Do people get any physical symptoms afterwards? I know everybody might be different, but what would be the dark side of having a Kundalini activation process?
So I think what we really need to do now is just make that distinction between Kundalini awakening, whether that's through willful practices or through a spontaneous awakening, working with Kundalini energy, intentionally driving that energy upwards, and what I'm actually doing, which is a Kundalini activation, which is a practice. It is very much a path of surrender. It's a downward moving energy, not an upward moving energy. And what that means is you will only get what you are ready for in that given moment in time. Now, that might be more than you think you're ready for, but you will only get what you're ready for. So, okay, so that being said, yeah, after I talk to people about this during the session, yeah, things might come up with a regular client that might turn up. Yeah, you're going to have perhaps emotions or thoughts or memories start bubbling up to the surface in the days or weeks after a transmission. It's all a very normal part of the process. It's coming up for clearing and release. Very often when people experience it, they will experience it not so much from the I self, but maybe from a place of a witness, where emotions come up. Again, this is very similar to other types of energy work when we're releasing. So there could also be other responses to Kundalini. It really depends on, everyone's in their own place, their own point on their pathway. And there's going to be some people which, perhaps movement starts, or other sort of, let's call it Kundalini symptoms. There may other arousal of other Kundalini symptoms that could happen afterwards. It's not unusual for that to happen, but people only get what they're ready for in that given moment in time.
Got you. Yeah, that sounds cool. Really, this is what I was very excited to be sharing, is my personal experience with Kundalini activation. And maybe before I get into that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between a spiritual awakening and a Kundalini awakening. And I've only recently started to learn that whilst there's a level of overlap, they can be two very different things and they can happen at a different time. Let me give you what I think happens with me, and then you can tell me if this makes sense, and if not, I'll learn something and I will sit humbly for an explanation. What happened with me was I was going through a very difficult divorce, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And I went to an ayahuasca retreat and I had incredible experiences, which I've talked about in a previous podcast. But after the 2 ceremonies I had, I started to have these, they felt like full body hiccups. That's how I would describe them. A lot of this is on a podcast, so for those on video, it's like that. It was my shoulders I would notice, and I noticed it throughout for a year or two after the ayahuasca experience, and it was never a problem. I found it quite amusing, if anything else. I would notice it would happen sometimes just before I went to sleep at night. So as I'm laying in bed, just about to go to sleep, my whole body would spasm, just one spasm. And I'd be like, oh, what was that? Other times I'd be lying in bed. If my girlfriend touched me, maybe just touched my leg or something like that, it would come through again. So it wasn't emotional. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just a bit amusing. So I'd forgotten about that. Then I went through a spiritual awakening, probably about 3 years after that, which emotionally was really the lowest time of my life. And then I came to see you for Kundalini activation. That was when I think what may have been started out with the ayahuasca, suddenly the session I had with you became a huge catalyst. And I started experiencing very extreme spasms, especially if I was listening to spiritual music, sometimes if I was meditating. But this stayed with me for a couple of years. And again, I found it fascinating. I found it very pleasant, but I don't know how that related to my spiritual awakening, if these were two separate things, if they were just interrelated or separate. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say they're very interrelated. Yes, essentially, I think they say that you can have a Kundalini awakening on its own, but when you have a wait a minute, it's a really hard one, this actually to answer, because there's so many different people just discussing what their interpretation and their experiences. I think ultimately you probably can have a very much a spiritual awakening in one sense, but the Kundalini is different. You were talking about arisal, so maybe the method is different, but the end result is the same, perhaps.
Right.
Perhaps what we can say. But I mean, I think there's so many different opinions on that. It's a really hard one to answer.
Absolutely. I think this is the whole thing, isn't it? I think any form of awakening is pretty much a synonym for confusion. There is no normal. There's no standard thing. Everybody's experiencing things very differently. But that was my background into Kundalini activation. I came to see you on the recommendation of a friend who told me it was amazing. I respected her judgment and signed up without any expectations whatsoever. And I remember, I think you advised that I show up 10 minutes early because it was my first time. This was a Zoom meeting. There was perhaps about 7 or 8 other people. We didn't really connect with the other people, but you could see all of us on the screen. And then you instructed us to lay down, get ourselves comfortable, and make sure that you could see us through the webcam. And this is what I'm going to play now. I'm going to see what happens if I do a shared screen. And this is 1 minute. I appreciate a lot of people will only be listening to this. So what I'll do is I'll talk through it, and then perhaps you can explain as well what the hell is going on. I still find it amuses me so many years afterwards. Right. So this was, I think your sessions are usually about 45 minutes. Is that right, Philippa?
It's normally an hour transmission.
Normally an hour. So all I've done here is I just took 2 clips of it really from the full recording. And as you can see, for those of you who can't see, I'm laying on a queen size bed. There is some music. I'm not sure. Maybe I need to turn that up slightly. And what's happening is I'm hearing music, and it's spiritual music, but it doesn't seem to be anything special. You've already told me, Philippa, that this is music which can be found on things like Spotify. But what is happening, as I'm laying in my bed, I'm spasming, and it's about to get more intense. I'm not sure if there is any sound to this. There should be. I might have to add it in afterwards. But this is it now. I am going crazy. I am flailing. It's like being wired up to an electric shock machine or something like that. My head is going left to right. I am twisting. One of my friends said to me, it seems like a very, very over-the-top orgasm. It's all my body. I am kind of holding on for dear life. This wasn't the most intense experience I've had. The very first experience, I was bouncing all over the bed to the point that I was nearly coming out of it. So there's a huge amount of energy. I felt absolutely exhausted afterwards, and I wasn't able to control it. So that was it. Could you talk me through what was going on at the time? Just talk me through, what was making my body shake so much like that?
Okay, well, potentially a few different things, but as heightened energy is entering into the body, it's going to cause a release. So we could talk about that change in frequency, which affects the nervous system, which causes spasms or sharp movements or a series of movements within the body. We can say it is energy as it moves through your meridian system and hits blockage, and that causes the body to move.
Now, and
but everyone releases.
Yeah, I remember you saying this is a transmission. Is this from my head to my toes or vice versa? What direction does this come in?
So yeah, with all energy transmissions, it's downward moving energy. So that's hands-on healing, Reiki, Shaktipat, Kundalini activation. Energy is entering through the crown and dropping and moving downwards. Obviously, there's still a reverse of energy. It's a complete torus field of energy. But when the energy is entering in, it's coming in through the crown.
I see. Yeah, that felt very, very intense for me. I've not experienced how other people experience it. So how does it range? I think I had maybe my fourth or fifth session where I didn't feel very much. I was laying there. There wasn't any energy coming through. That was my fourth time. But the first 3 times were as equally intense as I experienced in that video. How do other people experience it?
People can experience it in many different ways. I mean, you had a very physical response, very kinesthetic. There's a lot of body movements, but it's most likely a release in energy or in blockages as that's coming through. But people can experience it in many different ways, whether it's visuals or downloads or lights, colors, scenes, whatever it might be, and there really isn't a right or wrong. In fact, it's best not to get too caught up with how we respond and clear energy in the body. The body will clear it the way it clears it, and it's kind of not our business how it happens. It happens how it happens. And also, you mentioned your third or fourth, fifth session, I'm not sure, was very different. So every session is going to be different. It's like no 2 meditations are ever going to be the same. No 2 yoga sessions are ever going to be the same. You're always going to have something different. You're always in a completely different place. Very often when we're working with this, and I've certainly found that with my own journey, is you can have a series of very perhaps energetic big releases where you're going down and you're really stirring up some crap at the bottom, and you're just allowing some to come out. But then you're also going to have those transmissions where are going to be a lot more nurturing. They're going to be softer. Are going to and it's all really about creating a balance. And I think this is probably why the Kundalini activation practices are gaining the amount of popularity as they do, is because it enables us to keep a foot in both worlds. There is this constant balance. So yes, you are going down and you are dipping into those darker things and pulling out blockages and harder things, but then you're also going to balance that out with that accelerated life force, that healing, that nurturing type of energy as well, which balances us effectively.
Could you explain what you mean by a blockage? What is a blockage and clearing a blockage?
Okay, so when we're talking about blockages, as we go through our life, we're having all of these experiences, emotional responses to things. Now, many believe that all that emotional response is stored in the body. It's stored in the cells, it's stored in the chakras, And then we carry that around, and that in turn then can cause disruption or dis-ease within the body. So then when we're looking at clearing those blockages, we're looking at a disturbance in the field, a change of frequency in the cell, letting go of that information that's stored in the cell and releasing it out. So that energy then can be reused for something else, creation, whatever.
This sounds like a form of spiritual trauma releasing then. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you
Thank you. I appreciate the validation there. Right. So, as I said, I've not seen anybody else go through a Kundalini activation process. I've not seen anybody else go through a Kundalini activation process. The other thing I haven't seen is I haven't seen what's going on behind the webcam. What are you doing? I imagine you as this kind of James Bond supervillain with your Zoom screen with all these different camera views of all the different people who are being activated at once. What are you doing at that time? Do you have a facilitator checking in on people's health and making sure that everybody's safe on camera, or is this just you on your own doing this?
James Bond supervillain. Interesting.
I'm not selling you here, am I? Sorry about that.
That's not my perspective at all. But
thank God for that.
So what it is yeah, I have the Zoom call up. I have 10, give or take, whatever it might be, people on the screen, maybe more, maybe less. I'm working with each person individually and essentially doing the same thing that I would be doing in in-person class, where I spend time connecting, I suppose. So we ask people on the Zoom to preferably get in a position where they can get horizontal from head to toe, so I'm able to see the body. But the main thing is being able to see the face, which is my address. So I connect there. I'm doing pretty much the same thing as I'm doing in person, and that is getting out the way. I'm getting out the way so I can just allow this channel. I connect through intuition, get myself out of the way. I spend time with each person. I spend time with everyone as a group. No, there is no one else here. It is just me. It's very personal in that sense, which I think is a good thing. It's, you know, everyone has their eyes closed anyway, even in a open in-person class. So it's nice. It's a nice intimate relationship where I'm able to work with that individual. So yeah, there's no one else involved.
Do you do this in a sequence then? So if there's 10 people, do you activate person 1, then person 2, person 3? Is the 10th person waiting a bit longer for things to get started for them?
No, because I will go to the whole group in the onset. I'm working with everyone. So I'm connecting as I speak to every single person or connect with them as they hop onto the call. The transmission's already begun. I've already started making that connection with them. And that's the same as in person. How I work very intuitively is all I can say. I will have everyone up on the screen initially, and then I will be working intuitively as to where people are at within their process and when I need to step in and when I'm going to just leave them to continue their surrender and be in their own moment, and then I will come back in. So yeah. What's
the significance of the music? As I remember asking you about the music and you said, oh, some of it's available on Spotify or something like that. Is it special music? Is it just music to amplify the mood? Is it necessary?
It is very much selected. The type of music, it's not all quiet meditation music. There are more meditative tones, there's softer tones, and then there's much more elevated, more energetic music coming through as well. There may be music which an individual might find more triggering, some will be more nurturing. It is really important, you know, because this is about that, forming that reconnection to the body. It's about using our senses, and sound is a perfect way for us to engage physically with our own bodies. It's something which we are all able to connect with. So it is super important. It's very important to Ben and Wong. You know, he says that the music is important, and it does need to be selected carefully, and provide a journey. And again, you're working through different emotions, so it's going to evoke different emotions in the participant as well. So yeah, music is definitely, sound is important. Yeah.
Beautiful. I really appreciate all of that. Let's talk about this lady who contacted me last week. So I don't know very much about her, but in terms of a case study, this is a lady who told me that she had gone through a Kundalini activation and it was making her incredibly uncomfortable. In fact, she said she can't continue living like this. Now, I don't know the background, but she didn't say it had come from anything in particular. She had done yoga. She had advised all of her friends and family since don't do yoga. So possibly she had activated it through something like that, and she felt very, very stuck. She was going through a lot of very negative emotions, and she'd experienced at a time in her life when she was relatively happy. She enjoyed her work. She had good friends and family, and something changed very quickly. So what is this spontaneous Kundalini awakening which she might have experienced?
Well, I suppose the first question is, we don't know whether it was a spontaneous awakening or whether it was through willful practices. Yes, you need to be work respectfully when you're working with this energy. Now, let's again just make that distinction between willful practices of a seeker intentionally driving energy upwards. It's a bit like sort of smashing through the gates, hitting on a ketchup bottle. And if a seeker is doing a lot of practice, intentionally driving up this energy, they're not taking the appropriate time to ground. Really important to integrate, to process. Everything's coming up. They haven't educated themselves. They're not working slowly enough. Maybe, I don't know, people can get carried away with that idea of that energy. Now, I think this particular individual perhaps wasn't aware of what she was doing, but maybe if she was doing Kundalini yoga and she's intentionally driving that energy upwards, this is what could have happened. Now, perhaps that energy, instead of coming up the central channel, it's gone up the front, it's gone up the back, it's created a bottleneck of energy. And this is where you get, perhaps the more negative stories about Kundalini. And even with, we can call this premature awakening, where it's woken up, and the energy has just risen quite suddenly or forcefully or without the proper preparation, effectively, or working slowly enough to deal with each thing as it comes up. It can happen spontaneously, and often does, and when perhaps a spontaneous awakening where someone's experienced some trauma, and then that energy, too much energy, enters the body too much, too soon, and then it creates navigating the world challenging, let's say, and it's something that can happen. However, it is not the same as doing activations. We're talking about a transmission where energy is dropping down into the body. It's a natural, yes, it's a powerful process, but it's a natural process. You will only get what you need. So it is highly unlikely that someone who's working with Kundalini activation practices are going to prematurely awaken their Kundalini unless they are also using willful practices. Now, the truth of it is, probably a lot of them are, because that's how they ended up in a Kundalini activation process class anyway. Is because they're already on that path to awaken Kundalini. But anyone who's working with this energy, and everyone is responsible for themselves, it should get the proper education to know what they're doing. But I certainly wouldn't say cutting out yoga or meditation would be any sort of resolution to this problem. In fact, I would say the opposite. I would say continuing to do that, because it's that resistance to what was happening to her body which was probably making it so hard for her to deal with everything, because she's resisting all that energy that's coming up. If she was able to open and surrender a little bit more to it, perhaps it'd be easier. But obviously I don't know this lady or any of her personal circumstances, so it's very hard for me to talk about what's specifically happening.
Let's say people listen to this podcast and they're really interested, first of all, to know more. And you said you recommend that people read up and study. Can you recommend any particular resources if somebody is curious to know more before they take action?
No.
No, I couldn't find anything either. That's why you're here today. You are my resource. Perhaps
No,
just
I
getting in
mean,
contact with you might.
yeah, no, I mean, off the top of my head.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Again, I hadn't found very much, and obviously, I have looked into Kundalini activation before this podcast and after receiving the sessions with you. But you seem to be the authority in terms of if anyone's got any questions, perhaps they just field them directly to you, which would save people having to read and do their internet Googling. How does somebody know if they're actually ready for Kundalini activation?
I think anyone that is on that path or just curious and open, you try. I think it's that inner nudge, isn't it? When you're working, when you find yourself in that place where you're seeking the truth, whatever you want to call it, when you find yourself in that place, all we can really do is start reading, finding sources to read, spiritual teachers, looking at different modalities, and Kundalini activation is no different from that. I think if you feel that nudge, that calling, you're curious, you're open, try. Do a few sessions, see how you get along with it. You'll soon know whether this is something which is going to really resonate with you. And I don't think CAP's for everyone, as I said. I think there is so much out there, and I think that's all any of us can do, and myself included. I just started looking around, and yes, I was reading and searching and listening to different teachers and trying different things and just seeing, and you take from things which those experiences, those things which resonate with you, and you hold on to those, and you let go of the things which don't. And I think we all do that when we're walking that road.
One thing again I want to clarify is that you actually offer sessions in person and remotely, and I've only ever done remote sessions with you. We're geographically quite far away. Am I right that the geography doesn't matter? You could be offering your services to somebody in the UK, in America, in Australia, as long as they're happy with the time zone difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting one, because when I first came across this idea of working online, I remember quite struggling with that idea of how this whole process can work online, but it absolutely does work online. If you've ever done any of these meditations where you have 10,000 people, 15,000 people meditating globally, they can be really powerful experiences. And I think we just need to give ourselves a bit of a stretch and understand that, no, you don't have to be in the same physical space. Having said that, I think there's a lot to be said for being in the same physical space. I think us as human beings, we like to share the same space. We gather together in communities. I think it brings another element into the process, into the experience of Kundalini activation. But absolutely, it certainly doesn't need to be there. And from my perspective, it doesn't need to be there. It is a connection, it's a channel, it's an intention. Energy can travel all the way to the stars. Energy is energy.
How often do you do these online activations?
I probably have 4 to 6 a month, I would say, on various times and days.
Okay, and everybody is welcome to that, right? They don't need to have experience. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a few sessions which I will do for previous participants only, mainly because I don't run through a full explanation. There are other sessions where they're referred to as open classes, and they're for new people as well as old people, and I will explain the full process at the beginning of the session. So.
And do some people come for a single session? Do some people come for multiple sessions? What's the norm? Are there any norms?
It's a very personal thing, and I will get many of my participants will come once a month, twice a month. I'll get other people that I will see maybe once a week for 5 weeks, and then I won't see them again for a very long time. I will get other people that will come 2 or 3 times a year. So yeah, I mean, when you try it and you experience it, you will know in the days afterwards if it's something that you want to try again, to repeat, and you will know if you feel that shift. I would certainly say try at least 2 or 3 to allow that proper absorption of the energy. But yeah, you'll know. And as I say, probably most regularly, once or twice a month, but everyone's their own person. They're when people are working at very different speeds, you get some seekers who are daily practices. They're doing their yoga daily, they're doing their meditations daily, they're doing their breath work daily, they're doing all of this daily. And you get more sort of, I don't know, what would you call it, the sightseer type of spiritual seeker, where they sort of dip their finger in here and there and try a bit of this and see. People will do what they want to do. They'll do what feels right.
How about coming in person? I know you're based down south. Is it where do you tend to do your physical retreats? And are these retreats or just individual sessions?
Yeah, so I do monthly classes, open classes, a few in London, Guildford. I go down to Brighton every few months. I have some in Surrey. I also do 1-day retreats, so that'll be for the whole day, and that will be just Kundalini activation for the day. Or I do 2-day retreats and sometimes longer. The 2-day and longer retreats will incorporate all the non-duality transmissions as well.
Wonderful. I think we've covered everything I wanted to cover. I am really delighted that you've given me a lot more clarity about the actual process itself. I love the fact that what you offer is something which anybody can do. It can be done online, and without going into specifics, I did Kundalini activation at a time when I definitely needed help and didn't have much money, and I found the prices were incredibly accessible for everybody. And I would feel absolutely great to know if anybody's listening, if they do attend a session with you, just to let me know how it went. I would feel that, I would feel great to follow up and find out how people found it. So thank you so much, Philippa. I'm so delighted that you've been able to answer so much information about a topic which I did find it very difficult to find information about elsewhere. For everybody listening, if you're interested, I'm going to be sharing Philippa's direct contact details in her bio. If you do experience a session with her, please get in touch and let me know what you thought of it, because it's a very, very unusual experience. Thank you so much, Philippa. Good luck with everything.
Beautiful. And thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. I hope you liked this episode. To learn more, please visit our website at spiritualhealing.cloud and be sure to give us feedback and spread the word.